All right. So what most of the people in the audience probably already know is that the knowledge graph is getting really, really popular. In the Gartner hype cycle in 2018, it was for the first time on the hype cycle, and in 2019 it already got way higher. Yeah, and I'm guessing that some of you already are building their own knowledge graphs. Now, today the talk is going to be how do you deal with speech technology in a knowledge graph? And so here's my regular answer. I mean, so we build various knowledge graphs for customers, and I see a lot of customers that build or talks where people build knowledge graphs, and it seems that most of them are about building up a 360 views on customers. You take all the data from all your silos and then build a knowledge graph. And they're usually about customers, but you know, if you really want to understand your customer, you should listen to what they actually say in the interactions that you have with them. And then if you get an understanding, you have to formalize it and somehow take that understanding, put it in your knowledge graph, and then learn and become better at understanding your customer. So that's the whole point. Why is speech technology important? Because you need to listen to your customers. Yeah. Now think of this. What could you do in your enterprise if speech technology was perfect? Huh? Well, to begin with, it's fairly obvious. You really could hear and understand your customer. Yeah. What do they think about you and your products and your processes? But to be a little bit more practical, yeah, with perfect speech technology, you can do automatic transcription of the interaction with your customer. We now see use cases for legal compliance, to analyze complaints, to look at calls and callers and classify them in their right classification categories, or find patterns in repeated calls. And then the other thing is you can start identifying your callers using biometrics with speech. Yeah? Or you can check up on your agents. Huh? Are your agents really saying the right things? Are they really helping the caller? Are they conveying the right information? Are they hitting all the required talking points that you want your agents to hit? If they talk about the competitor, do they actually use the right objection handling, etc., etc. Yeah. And then if you look at the things that we work on, it's a lot about sales processes. So, I mean, once you can take the things that your customer and your agent talk about, you can start analyzing successful and failing conversations. What conversation styles lead to a sale or a deal? Yeah. Usually, in the sales agents that we look at working call centers, where you try to get to a concept called band, where you actually figure out if the sales agent talked about an unavailable budget, and is the person you're talking about actually someone that can make a decision, and did he actually express that they really wanted something, and did he give a timeline about when he wants to decide? Yeah. Well, you want to know if that's in the conversation. And then, of course, did your agent talk about the right products, given the need of the caller, or did the customer bring up competitive products? Yeah, and can you maybe on the fly help your agent already with the right object handling? Yeah, or when you know the industry of the caller, can you provide the agent with use cases for that industry? Or based on the nature of the call, should you maybe transfer the call to another agent or to a technical consultant, or maybe try to close the deal because this is a real sales situation? Anyway, many things you can do if speech technology was perfect. So now, is speech technology already perfect? Well, here's a very nice picture that I found about the history of speech recognition. Yeah, in 1962, you could do the first isolated words, and in 72, there's this beautiful IBM demo where someone controlled a calculator by being able to say 1, 2, yeah, make sure that there's a really big gap between the words, and then add, subtract. So anyway, that was the state in 72, and then we got better. We got connected words, you got continuous speech, and we're now getting to the point where, in 2002, we got to the point where you could do spoken dialogue, yeah, in very controlled situations. And I personally got into speech technology in 2001. I was still I was working at the Dutch Telecom and at a technical university, and I was doing research in designing multimodal interactions, so a person could say do his email using both a pen and speech on a tablet, and we wrote a fairly cool paper about that. And I also got some patents on personal assistants, where you use speech technology to get things done from the telephone network. Yeah, so I was already really enthusiastic in the early 2000s. But even in 2014, yeah, people were complaining, you know, speech technology gets it only 95% right. So that means that that when I dictate a text, then 5 out of the 100 words are going to be wrong. Yeah, so people were still kind of not entirely kind of convinced that speech technology was here. But then I found this really recent quote, and I totally believe that, and that is, there's been more progress in speech recognition technology in the last 30 months than in the first 30 years. Yeah, I personally do all my text messages now with Google Now. I just only talk to my phone. I just can't type, and I'm guessing that more than 50% of the people that are listening to me right now already have an Alexa or Google Home. Yeah, so you're getting really, really used to talk to devices. Yeah? And then all the big players, whether it's Google or Microsoft, IBM, Apple, now all claim that they turned the dream of speech recognition into a reality. And again, personally, I think, I mean, I'm a big fan of Google, but other technologies are great too. And I really think that we turned the corner here. But okay, so even if it were true that the technology is the point at 95%, you know, in the context of understanding your customers, I mean, your bosses, your enterprise will say, wow, 95% is 95% more than I can do now. Or, I mean, if you start at 0, it's actually infinitely more than I can do now. Yeah. So with every customer we talk about, it's all about that it's fantastic. So the question is, how can you tie NLP and speech technology together in one coherent context, so you can really learn, understand, and help your customers? Yeah. So say you are able to do all that wonderful speech technology, how do you put it in a context where it all belongs together? And I'm going to talk mostly about that today, but my answer is, you really got to put all that knowledge into a semantic knowledge graph. So what do we do with NLP and speech technology and knowledge graphs in general? So I'm going to talk mostly about what we do for a call center and speech technology, but the same technology but then apart from using the speech, we also use in another project that we do about Noam Chomsky, where we take about 1,000 articles and papers that he created in his life, and use all kinds of NLP and statistical processing to put it in a knowledge graph, so that journalists and students and researchers can more easily investigate the life of Noam Chomsky, and we already have interest of other luminaries that want to be in that knowledge graph. So first, just to demonstrate some principles, minus the speech, I'm going to show you an incredibly quick demo of that particular graph, so you get the basic concepts, what we're trying to do. So let me go to one here. I believe this is, no, this is not the one. Let me go to this one here. And then we go to here. Yeah, so say what we have is a little impression of our knowledge graph. Say we have a bunch of books and articles. So in general, I can find any book here by finding say a particular book. We have different types of books. So take a Chomsky book, and we could do manufacturing consent. Yeah, so we have another book, but I chose media control. Usually when we get large documents, we chop them up in chapters. So the green things are chapters. Chapters are chopped up in little pieces called paragraphs. So here are a number of paragraphs. Then per paragraph, so we have some concepts, persons in there, the sentiment, articles that are similar to it, but for now, let's keep it going. So what are the concepts that this particular paragraph talked about? So I can look at the content here. And so here is one of the chapters, or one of the paragraphs in the chapter Public Relations. that we applied entity extraction for. So we have a taxonomy of all the important concepts in the work of Noam Chomsky. So a tool that I'll show you again is where we can create taxonomies. Yeah. So if you want to deal with speech technology and NLP, you always start with taxonomies. Yeah, that's kind of the most important part that you have to build before you can do anything meaningful. Yeah, so let's say look for Vietnam War in our taxonomy. I'm assuming that most people know what a taxonomy is. I'm not even going to describe it, but here we see that we created a huge taxonomy around all the political concepts in the work in the work of Noam Chomsky. So we have a Vietnam War, which has a broader or more general concept called wars, which is part of events. Anyway, you get the point. And then very important, this Vietnam War is a concept. You see here, it's just a concept, and it has a preferred label, the way that you want to talk about it, and all the other ways that people also talk about the concept. Yeah, so we have this taxonomy. We use that taxonomy then to get all the important concepts out of a chapter. So we get a few of them: war, class, healthcare, South Africa. Then if Noam Chomsky talks about South Africa, he also usually will talk about some other concepts. So I just show you the core occurrence or odds ratios from South Africa to other terms. So for example, we find that people, if they talk about South Africa, then they also talk about Nelson Mandela. Now, of course, he talks in other books about Nelson Mandela. But we also could click on Nelson Mandela and find lots of more information about Nelson Mandela in the Wikipedia and in the DBpedia. Yeah, so this is a huge build-up of a knowledge graph where we do a lot of NLP things. One more thing here, we can now also look at text similarity. So I can choose similarity here. Let's actually do it in a different way. Similar article, similar paragraph, and I don't know if there's actually a link available. Oh yeah, so we can even go from a particular term and say, how is a particular paragraph in this book similar to, say, a paragraph in media control? Anyway, this is a very quick demo to give you a simple idea of how we build knowledge graphs using NLP techniques. Yeah? But then the thing I'm going to talk most about is what we do for a call center. So we work with a call center in Atlanta called N3. It's a big, intelligent call center. About 1,500 people work there. Most of these people they all have a college degrees. It's not just reading scripts, it's actually investigating customers and doing fairly complicated sales processes for their biggest clients like Microsoft, IBM, Google, Salesforce, Cisco. Actually, most of what they do is sell cloud services. And so the point was, up to 2 years ago, they had an enormous amount of text chats between agents and customers, and even way more conversations between agents and customers. But there was one huge black hole because they didn't know how to analyze the contents of it. Yeah. Then we were asked to provide an AI layer on top of all of this, and so now we can actually understand the conversations to make the agents smarter. Yeah. We now can figure out what are my customers and agents talking about, what are the product categories they're talking about and the sellable products, what are competitive products they talk about, and then how can we help them with objection handling, what are the features and functions a customer talks about, and how can you relate that back to the products in the product catalog. Do we see that suddenly the customers start talking way more about a product X, whether it's a product you want to sell or a competitor, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't have to belabor the point, but there's a lot of things you can do when you look at sales conversations. And then you want to help the agent while he's busy. Yeah. So based on the persona that you're talking to, whether it's a CIO or a security buyer or someone from purchase department, or based on the industry, or based on the demand scenario, meaning is this a direct sale, or maybe is this a cry for technical help? Yeah, so all of these things determine how you can help an agent in real time with real-time help. So this is the challenge that we're working on. And when this system got into production, there was an instant huge rise in the conversion rate, the number of calls that actually turned into a sale. So we're very proud of this result, and this is something that's really important for, I guess, every customer, using AI on top of what they do in their customer call center. So what are the things that we did for our customers? So we built an industry knowledge graph. I'm not going to talk about today because it's mostly going to be about NLP and speech technologies, but we're building a knowledge graph where we know everything about the target companies you're calling and their subsidiaries and the contact people there and the products and services, what they already have, etc. But again, not for today. So most importantly, we built taxonomies. But to start with, we built taxonomies, and then we use those taxonomies for entity extraction. I'm going to show you a few examples of analytics and maybe a little bit of text classification about product recommendations. And then we'll start talking about speech recognition and how it adds complete new dimension to the whole exercise that we're doing here. So again, I'm assuming that most people in the audience know about taxonomies. Once you build a taxonomy, you have an agreement in your company how you want to talk about certain concepts, words, titles, products, the buyer intent, sales terms, etc. So that is kind of our core taxonomy that we use everywhere. And then for every individual client, we built our own product catalogs and product taxonomies. So to begin with, we have a sales cycle foundational shared taxonomy. Where we have I just talked about bent before. So here we can look at bent or authority. And then we have a concept of decision maker. We have that as a core concept with the preferred label is decision maker. But then here are all the other ways that people also talk about it. And then we look at more broader concepts or more general terms or narrower terms, so more specific concepts. Anyway, this is not today, not a tutorial on taxonomies. And then for every specific client, you have taxonomies of the products they use. So you might have video and telepresence as a service, but no one ever will use that term. They will use other terms like video service or video as a service. So again, a lot of work to take concepts and come up with all the alternative labels and then also look at the more abstract categories. Anyway, so you understand it's built around taxonomies, and then we do taxonomy-based entity extraction. So what we find is the commercial taxonomy editors are pretty good at entity extraction, especially when you spend a lot of time doing pref labels and alt labels. However, if your company has really complicated product names or concepts that are not regular business terms, then we found that we had to write our own entity extractor that can deal with product names, because it's almost impossible for a human being to come up with all the names that your agent or especially your customer mangles the name of complex concepts. And so we created an entity extractor for that. But then for some cases, you actually also want to go outside and use external entity extractors. So we do use things like Cogito or IBM Natural Language Understanding. In the demo that I just gave about Noam Chomsky, I showed you how we can say take a concept of Nelson Mandela and then reach out to DBpedia and then continue our exploration from there. So that is the main thing I want to say about the entity extraction point. And if you want to see how that works in practice, I could go to one of my demos that I have open here. So here is a part of the knowledge graph that we have around, in this case, a Cisco campaign. And so here would be a typical chat transcript. So here is what happened between an agent and a customer. But then we found in practice that it doesn't help you if you do your analytics, your NLP, on the entire chat between agent and customer. What you really want to do is look at the things that the agent said, and then look at the things that the client said. And then once you have that, then we can do the entity extraction, agent positive terms, client positive terms, and you can look at the technical things the client and the agent talked about. So here you see some things like Cisco and Connect, the router, networks, security requirements. So here are the entities that we got out of our chats. Yeah. So now I could say way more about that. And so here we see, again, in a graphical form, the agent sales terms and the client tech terms. And we can also see for each product that if a customer talks about this product, then in general, it will also talk about this product. And if you talk about this product, in general, also will talk about that product. Anyway, you get my point. So there's a lot of, again, statistical analysis and machine learning that you can do on top of your knowledge graph. Well, let me go back to my presentation. So where was I by now? I was here. Yeah, so what do we do with this? So we have data now in the knowledge graphs, and we can start looking at, so here we grade out the names of the people in a campaign, but this is names. You can look at, say, the number of negative, neutral, and positive chats, and you don't see much if you do it this way, but if you take the ratio, you see that some people are many, many more times more positive than other people. Yeah, so this is something that really helps you in understanding when a particular sales get done or not, depending on the positivity. You can look at, so what do people talk about? Well, this was a Cisco campaign, so no one is surprised that it's actually about networks, routers, and switches. But we also look at products from a perspective, can you buy it or not? We call that sellable products, and suddenly we can look at the actual things that people can sell. Yeah, and now it's completely different products that people talk about in general. We can look at where each salesperson actually talks about. Do certain salespeople really like to talk about things you can actually sell? Yeah? So this person here really likes to talk about things you can buy. This person really likes to talk more about abstract concepts. Yeah. Well, I can tell you, you really want to have your customer talk about things you can actually buy. Yeah, because it improves the conversion rate. Then you can look at, okay, given two particular salespeople, what do they usually talk about? Yeah, because you can use that then for online routing, or who has the most experience on a particular product. Or you can look at per industry, what are the products that within this industry people usually like to talk about. And again, there's so much more to be said about it. And I actually already talked about product recommendations just now, where we say if a customer talks about X, then you know it's better that the BDR talks about Y. And I just, in my demo, showed a little bit about that. Yeah, so I showed you this. There's a particular talk. We talk about this router here. Well, if I talk about this, I'd like to talk about that, and I also like to talk about that. Anyway, this is, again, helpful for product recommendations. So this is a whirlwind tour of what we do within in the call center. So now, finally, how does it all fit together, and how does speech fit into this? Yeah. So in general, yeah, in our knowledge graph platform, we take regular text, yeah, or we take documents and whole books. Yeah, and I just showed you in the Chomsky graph how we chop that into little pieces of text. And in a bit later, I talk about how we look at force and turn that into a text. But anyway, we have an input that is textual in some form. We ingest it and we put it in our knowledge graph. So now we have fragments of text in our knowledge graph, yeah, or bundles of text. Well, let me. So the first step, what I talked about is so far is that we built these taxonomies in external taxonomy tools, and then what we do is at regular intervals we export the taxonomy, usually built by a group of people, export it into the knowledge graph too. So now the knowledge graph has the text and the taxonomy. Then the next step is that we can take the taxonomy and the text, feed it to the entity extractor, and now we get entities. Yeah, so now we know that this particular chat talks about the RV32, yeah, or that this particular chapter in the book talks about Nelson Mandela. Yeah, so that's the first step. Then we can take the taxonomy in the text, and we can extract the sentiments. Or what we had to do is we also needed to classify the chats or the text that we get in. For example, we want to know in real time, is this particular conversation more like a direct sale, or is this something where you want to upgrade your system or optimize, or you want non-technical help or whatever? Yeah. So we had several people label tens of thousands of these chats. Yeah, and then we used machine learning and a text classifier to learn based on input what the nature of a call is. We store the classification model in the database, and now in real time, when we get a text in, we can almost, after 2 or 3 sentences, say, oh, this is an immediate sale. Please help the agent in this particular way. Yeah. And then what I showed you both in the Chomsky graph and in the other graph is how we look at statistical relationship between the things that the person says. So we take entities, sentiments, and text, put it into our analytics tool, and now we can add statistical relations to our knowledge graph. But again, it all fits into one knowledge graph. Yeah, and then ultimately we can use that to do very intelligent queries on our knowledge graph for semantic exploration, or for analytic tools, or you want to do ad hoc queries, or for real-time decision support. Yeah, so this is how it all fits together. But how does speech technology fit into this? Well, obviously it's kind of clear. I mean, if you look at a big call center, then only 1% of all the data is text chats, but 99% is phone conversations. And in most states, you're actually allowed to record them, or if you cannot record them, at least you want to analyze it, yeah, before and put it in your knowledge graph before you let go of that particular recording. So, but the issue, so I said the speech technology right now is actually really good, yeah, and I'm very enthusiastic about it. But you might have noticed when you do your own speech recognition on your phone or other things, is speech recognizers are really bad at complicated product names, yeah, or names of people. So one of the innovations that we did, and something that is very, I mean, this is really a new thing that helps us a lot, is that we can take a taxonomy that we built, yeah, and then use that, all the preferred labels and the alt labels, to actually train the speech recognizer, so that we get way better text output. Yeah, so that if we mention a product, it actually shows up in the text that we got, so that we then can apply our entity extractor and get the right concepts out of a text. Yeah, and obviously the entity extractor is also fed by this taxonomy. Okay, so this is kind of the magic of why we can use speech technology for when you want to do why we can do speech recognition and speech technology and get really good results. Now, let me do a quick demo, and I don't know if it's going to work. I've never done it, but here is, let's see if I can find it here. This is just a demo application, but what you're going to see here is, this is from the last time. Yeah, this is a demo where we can see in the conversation whether certain products are mentioned, whether the competitors are mentioned, and whether the most important sales terms are mentioned. This is just a 1-minute demo, and I hope you can.
So, I talked to Bob Johnson. He's the VP of Engineering for the Subatomic Division. He said they need to buy some routers, and he is considering actually 2 models, Cisco RV215W and Jupiter CTP 2056. He said that he has the sign-off and the budget for Q4. And he's a decision maker on this purchase.
So what you see here is that he mentioned a few products. Yeah, it's a product. If this is a Cisco product, this is actually a competing product from a competitor. You see one step at a time, the most important sales terms were added. And if you watched the text, you might recognize it from your phone, where your phone is correcting you all the time and ultimately comes most of the time up with the right answer. And what you see here is a session ID. So what we also can do is actually go to the knowledge graph. So when we talked, yeah, actually all these things were added to the database. Yeah, so just based on this tiny fragment of a conversation, these triples were built into the triple store. Yeah, so this was the session with a number of phrases and the timestamp. That was it. Yeah, and then you have each phrase, and this is what person actually said. So I talked to Bob Johnson, who's a VP of engineering, was a subdivision division. Well, here we find VP of engineering as a term that was recognized, which is a contact persona, and then we could look at that. It has several broader taxonomies anyway. So the words are actually that we recognize are part of the taxonomy. Then we saw some technical terms. So we saw Jupyter and this particular router, and it's a router and networks and related hardware. And again, all of this is again part of the bigger picture, the taxonomy. Then this word we didn't do anything with. These are decision makers. So now we know that it's actually an authority. And he talked about a budget. Yeah, so I said they need to buy some routers. He said they had a budget for Q4. So Q4 is the time domain, and the budget is the budget. Yeah. So just talking a minute, I created this graph completely automatically. Yeah. So this is, and now I can ask. So how many people today talked about the RFE215 or talked about a router? Yeah. Or anyway, you get the point. So let me go back to my presentation. So, and this is going to be in the slides that I'll give you. So now you see how we went from a talk to this to the knowledge graph. Yeah, and then I'm just going to stop here. So basically, all I can say so far is, if you want to understand your customer better, then really, really, really listen to him or her. Put your understanding and learning in a knowledge graph, and if you want to do it yourself, we're here to help.